Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Office Line Generator project. Now I'm quickly just going to demo the finished project so that you can see what we're going to build. So here we can generate random office quotes with some information about when they were said and by who. And there are also going to be custom colors for this background that's going to spin depending on what character it is. So yeah, and we're also going to have an authentication mode that we can turn on. And if we have it on and we're not logged in, then we can't use the service. And if we log into a user that hasn't paid for a subscription, then we still can't use it. But if we log into a user that has paid for it, then we can use it. So this will just simulate adding authentication to this system. Now I'm quickly just going to go over the authentication flow of the system and about the different services and tools that we're going to use and some episode progression. And if you're not interested in that, then you can just skip ahead to the timecode that I have on the screen. So the system is going to use 3 components, 2 Docker containers, the first one containing our microservice with our very small API. And we're just going to use 1 route, which is going to serve us the office lines. Then the second one is our Keycloak server, which is going to store information about our users and what privileges they have, if they have the right to use our service or not. And we're also going to have a GUI, which you saw on the web page. Now how it's going to work is that the user is going to press the login button on our GUI and it's going to get redirected to our Keycloak server. And after successful login, they're going to get redirected back to our GUI with an authorization code attached. Now there's going to be a code exchanged to a authorization token, and we're going to have a role check to see if the correct role is attached. And in this case, it's going to be the paid role. So if the user is paid or not to use our service. If they have, then we're going to send a request to our API, and we're going to get back an office line that we will display on the screen. And if they have not, we're going to display an unauthorized message. This one. You must have a paid subscription to access this feature. Now the first tool we're going to use is Keycloak, which is an open source identity and access manager. And we will use it to add the authentication flow to our system. So it's going to have information about our users stored and what privileges they have and if they have the right or not to use our service. We're also going to use Docker, which is an open platform that allows developers to package applications and their dependencies into containers. And this will enable consistent execution across environments. And we once again will have 2 containers, one for our API and one for our Keycloak server. We're also going to use Postman, which is a comprehensive API development and testing tool. And this will really simplify the way that we are going to send requests and get the responses back in a nice UI. So we're going to use it to test our API route. We're also going to use React for our frontend, and this is a JavaScript library for building interactive user interfaces using reusable components. So we're going to build these components and that is going to be put together into our UI. We're also going to use White, which is a modern front-end build tool. And this will really optimize the way that we deploy our front-end. We're also going to use npm, which is a node package manager for JavaScript. And we will use it to install and manage the dependencies that we're going to use in this project. And we're also going to use Node, which is a JavaScript runtime environment that allows JavaScript to run on the server side. And this is for our backend microservice server that is going to serve us our API route. So this project is going to be in a couple of different episodes, with the first one you're watching right now. And this is going to contain the project structure and setup with all the dependencies and everything, so that we in the next episode can just continue with coding. And in that next episode, we're going to build our microservice and our small API route. And we're also going to test that route in Postman to see that it works fine and that we can continue on with the GUI build. In episode 3, I'm going to do 2 parts because it otherwise will be very long. We're going to build the GUI and the background and everything and set everything up so that we then in episode 4 can add the authentication mode with the login to Keycloak and checking the role for if the user has permission or not to use our service. So now with this done, we can continue on with the actual project setup. So the first thing you're going to do is clone down the GitHub repo. It's going to be in the video description, or you can just create your own if you want to. And then you're going to open it in your favorite code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. The first thing we're going to do is to create the microservice folder. And inside here, we're going to create a Docker file like this. I'm just going to paste the contents in here like this. And what this is going to do is that the Docker file is basically a template to how Docker is going to build this container. So we're going to use a node image. We're going to set the working directory inside our container to be /app. And this is where Docker is going to store all the files inside the container. Then we're going to copy over package.json, which is going to list our dependencies. And then we're going to install them. Then we're going to copy over the rest of the source files. And we're going to start our entry point here, app.js, which we're going to create here in a second. And the next thing that we need is outside microservice in the root. We're going to, like this, we're going to create a env file. And now this is just going to store some information about our Keycloak server, the credentials for the admin console. So we're just going to set our admin username and admin password to be admin, and this is going to allow us to log into our Keycloak admin console. So yeah, and now with this done, we can get into the terminal, and we're going to move inside the microservice folder. And here we're going to run npm init, and this will create a npm project. Now for package name, you can just keep it. Version description is fine. Now for entry point, you're going to change it to app.js. And then the rest you can customize if you want to, or just click through. So now we have a project inside the microservice folder with a package.json. And this is going to list our dependencies that we're now going to install. So in the terminal, you're going to type npm install express, course, and CSV parser like this, and it's going to install them and list them here. So Express is a fast and minimal web framework for Node.js to create APIs and web servers. And we will use it because it will serve as the backbone of the microservice. It will handle the route and requests and send out the responses. So it's going to be the service for this very small API. And then the CSV parser is a Node.js library for reading and processing CSV files. And we will use it because the office lines is actually in a CSV file, which we're going to add in a second here. So that's why we need that. And then Course is a middleware that enables cross-origin resource sharing. And we will need it because it will handle the browser restrictions between the GUI and the API. So it will simplify the process of them talking to each other. Yeah, so that's the dependencies that we need for the microservice. Now inside here, we're going to create a data folder, and we're going to copy over the office lines CSV file, and you can find it in the source code in the GitHub repo. So I'm just going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And here we have all the office lines, a very large file in the format character, line, season, and episode number. So great. With that done, now we can just create our entry point for the microservice, or app.js. And this is going to be a really small file in the beginning. The only thing we're going to have is we're going to import Express, and we're going to initialize it, and then we're going to start a server on port 4000. So nothing fancy, just to get started here. Now the next thing that we need to do is to set up our Keycloak configuration. And in the root, we're going to create a docker-compose.yaml file. And this file is very tab sensitive, so I would recommend you just copying it over from the source file, but you can write it and customize it if you want to. Now under services, the different containers that we're going to use is listed. The first one being our Keycloak container, and it's going to use this image, which you can find on Docker, or just copy it in if you want to. For environment variables, we're going to use the admin username and password that we set up in the .env file. And then we're going to run some commands to start the Keycloak server and import our realm, which we're going to create in a second here. It's going to run on port 8080, use the .env file. And here for volumes, it will make it persistent through restart. So if we remove the container and re-add it, and or stop and restart, our Keycloak configuration is going to stay intact. And then network, and we're just going to specify network so that the containers can talk to each other. Now they're not going to do that in this project, but it's good practice to have a network. Then the next container is going to be our microservice container, it's going to build the microservice folder on port 4000, which we specified earlier, and use the same networks. And this is just to specify that this is the volume and network. Now our Keycloak configuration is done. Sorry, our Docker configuration is done, and now we just need to set up our Keycloak realm. So we're going to create a new folder called Keycloak. Inside it, we're going to create another folder called Keycloak_init. And inside that, we're going to create a file called realm-export.json. And I'm just going to copy this in as well, like this. And here are our realm name, demo realm. We're going to have some users, the first one being the free user, and just some information, and then the password free. And we're going to have no realm roles attached to this user. So this user has not paid for the subscription and are not going to be able to use our service. We're also going to have a paid user, password paid, and realm roles paid. So this user will have access to the features. Then here we specify that there in fact is a realm role called paid. And here we have a client, and it's going to be the gateway client. And for redirect URIs, this is very important. And we're going to have it point to our front end so that we can get redirected to it after we have logged in. And it's going to be localhost 5173. And for web origins, you can just have it as a wildcard, but it's important to have. So yeah, that's our Keycloak realm done. And now with this done, we can just continue on with creating our Docker containers. So inside the terminal, you're going to move back into the root folder. And here you're going to type docker-compose up, and you can do --build. And this is going to take a little while, but it's going to build both our containers. First the microservice container and then the Keycloak. So I'm just going to wait for them to finish. Okay, so now the containers are up and running, and you can navigate to the Keycloak Admin-console URL, which I'm going to leave in the video description. And you can just log in with our admin. Now, then you can check that you have this demo realm. For clients, you should have a gateway client. For users, you should have 2 users. The free one should not have any roles. And the paid one should have the role paid. So if this is correctly set up, then you are done, and we can just continue on with setting up the front end. Okay, so now we can continue on with creating our front end. So inside the terminal in the root directory, you can type npm create white at latest, and then you're going to call the front end project something. I'm going to call it the office front end, like this. And then for framework, you will choose React, and for variant, choose JavaScript. And now we got this white build here with a lot of stuff. And now the first thing we're going to do is to install the dependencies. And as you can see, there already are React and React DOM. So you're going to move inside the frontend folder. And first of all, you can just run npm install to install these two already listed. And React is a JavaScript library for building component-based user interfaces. And we will use it to develop these containers and put them together into our UI. Now React-DOM handles rendering React components into the DOM. And we will use it because it is required to connect the React application with the browser's HTML structure. Do npm install tailwind CSS at tailwind CSS/white at white.js/plugin-react and framer-motion. Now, Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework for rapidly building modern responsive designs. And we will use it because then we can just use these utility classes and not have to build our CSS classes ourselves. We can just use the predefined ones. At Tailwind CSS/white is a CSS plugin for white, and it will integrate Tailwind into our white build. The same thing for at white.js/plugin-react. It's just a React plugin for white, so we can integrate React into our white build. And then framer-motion is an animation library for React. We will use it to add animations for our button and our background and such. So yeah, that's the dependencies that we're going to need. And the next thing we're going to do is to change some config files. first of all, the white config file. And now the only thing that we really need to do here is we need to import Tailwind like this. And we also need to add Tailwind to our plugins here. So we have already React, but we're gonna add Tailwind CSS like this, and that's done. Now after that, we can set up some CSS files here. First of all, index.css, and here are some default styling, which we're not gonna use, so we can just remove all of it. And instead, we're just going to simply import Tailwind. Now we're gonna do exactly the same thing for app.css, remove it, and import Tailwind. Now we also need to update the app.jsx, and here we are just going to have a very simple component here. We're gonna import index.css, we're gonna create our app component, and the only thing it's gonna do is to return a div. Now to check that our Tailwind is working, we also is going to add a Tailwind clause to this. So the one I'm gonna use is bg orange 500, and this will give it a orange background, and then you can add a text in here. I'm just gonna add hello. So when we later check if we have an hello text with an orange background, then Tailwind is working correctly. Now we also need to change some things inside the index.html. For our title text, I'm going to have line generator instead. And for this SVG, I'm going to update it with a custom one. It's going to be the office.svg. And I'm also going to copy that over now, which you can find in the GitHub repo. And we're going to paste it inside the public folder like this. So with that done, I think we are ready to test it. So to do that, we're going to stay in the frontend folder, and you're going to run npm run build first to build this and see if we have any errors. That went fine. Then you can do npm run dev to start the frontend server, and then you can just navigate to localhost 5173. I'm gonna drag it in here, and it seems like maybe I didn't save the index, so I'm gonna do that. Then we can go back. And as you can see, we have our custom favicon and our title, and we have an orange background for our hello text. So now our front end is set up correctly, and we are all done. So now we can just continue on in episode 2. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.